Joshua Green. And in San Jose, California, NBC News chief foreign affairs correspondent and host of Andrea Mitchell Reports, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, thanks for getting up early for us. The first interview we showed was the one that you did with her, and she says time and time and time and time and time and time again, it was allowed. Was it allowed?
It was not allowed to not return those records before she left the State Department. She violated the Official Records Act, according to her own State Department IG appointed by President Obama. What you have shown just now, Mika, is completely undercuts the argument she's been making for more than a year, just as she is trying to persuade voters that she's not untrustworthy. I think that the most surprising and in some ways shocking thing is their reaction, claiming that this is the same as what former secretaries did, the comparison they're making to Colin Powell. The facts are that Colin Powell was the first Secretary of State to ever use email. He used it specifically to try to launch the State Department into the new century and try to get people to communicate by email. He was using it as an example. He did use some personal emails. He didn't always separate them, but it was a completely above board. Everybody in the State Department knew what he was doing. It was not, in fact, violating a rule that was put in place under Clinton, not after she left. It was put in place under Clinton, and she was warned beforehand of decades of this Records Act that prohibits you to leave the State Department, leave any agency, and not turn over your records. So there are so many flaws in their argument, and you know, the politics, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I don't see how this is anything but devastating, given the fact that they have been making a completely different argument now for more than a year.
Yeah, the Clinton campaign, Josh, has long maintained the server was never breached. But the report tells of one incident when an advisor shut it down out of concern it was under attack. And the footnotes tell of an incident in 2011 where Secretary Clinton was concerned someone was, quote, hacking into her email after getting more than one email with a suspicious link. You know, when you get those, you get worried. According to the report, security officials should be notified even when a personal device is feared compromised. But according to the report, the Inspector General found no evidence that the Secretary or her staff ever reported the incident. And there's so much here that's fair to say, how can she remember?
Well, this is the whole problem. This is the reason you have these protocols in the government servers, so you don't expose important emails to the possibility.
But when she said it was allowed, 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 does she not remember any of this? Are we supposed to believe that?
I suppose we are supposed to believe it. I'm not sure a lot of people do, but...
Do they care?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a serious issue. I mean, if you were to, and this is a big if you were to remove, you know, Donald Trump from the equation right now, this is the story that would be roiling the 2016 presidential election.
Chuck.
And more than that, it would be fueling more hand-wringing in the Democratic Party and all this. The only reason why I think there isn't panic on the Democratic side is because of Trump. You know, I was thinking about this morning. If because of this breach, for instance, I don't think she could get confirmed, for instance, to be Attorney General. Well, you know, because like, you know, and I mean it this way, meaning like their basic defense here. I'm with Andrea and how, like, it's sort of you know, you pulled muscles here watching them trying to spin this, but their basic is, well, there wasn't a specific law that told us we couldn't do it.
Right.
So, like, you know, so they're making a very Al Gore. There's no controlling legal authority. Yeah, it's some like specific.
Andrea,
you know,
here are the things that like over time we remember here. Her saying repeatedly it was allowed. A private server set up in her home by an IT guy who was given immunity, and his emails are missing. And she even joked when she was asked, and I think in a high school gym, you know, did you wipe the server? Meaning, get rid of everything so no one can see it. And she joked about it being with the cloth. And I mean, I really don't want to be the one this, but I got to tell you, this is really hard to believe. It feels like she's lying straight out. Andrea Mitchell, is she lying?
I can't say that. I mean, I would let the viewer, I would let the voter make those determinations, but it doesn't hold up. There are so many inconsistencies, including their response yesterday, and as Chuck said, it was sort of jaw-dropping that they tried, instead of coming out and saying, look, you know, it was a mistake, as she has previously acknowledged, it was bad judgment, and We don't know whether or not it was hacked. We know that there were attempts to penetrate. There's no evidence in this report that penetration, that actually happened, but you can't, prove the negative. But they should have just come out, arguably, and said, this is a mess and we're going to try to move on. Instead, they're fighting it and coming out with a completely non-credible argument on her behalf. And it also makes her defensive, and it makes her run from reporters and not want to do interviews and not want to talk to people covering her events all day yesterday. So she's hunkered down now at a key point here. Yes, she's going to get the delegates, but the point is she wanted to win California. She wanted to end